Hey guys, it's Zeke, and I'm here today bringing you an Arcane Mage guide for PvP mostly. However, some of these things could be applied to PvE, although it's quite different. So, I'm going to be going over talents, honor talents, what to do when not bursting, how to burst, how to set up bursts, and how to live. And then racials and how they can be used to help you live or help you burst. So, yeah, let's get started. With talents, they're pretty much set in stone. You're almost always going to be using this because it's the easiest way to have on-demand damage. With Arcane Familiar, it'll always do something. However, it's easy to forget, and the damage is rather minimal. It's like a 5% maybe total damage change, and it's not burst. Palm is the best because it gives you 2 Arcane Blasts instantly, which is part of your burst rotation, which is kind of a huge deal. Words of Power, I mean, like 1% chance for 20% of your mana you have unspent. You're not always going to have full mana, so at best you get 5% increased chance for Arcane Missiles, which you may or may not even get to cast. So, Presence of Mind, easily the best talent for the level 15 talent choices. Level 30, I've always used Shimmer. I think the other two are pretty useless in comparison, although Cold Snap does have its uses. I mean, 3% of your health is kind of nice. It reminds you of the old Ice Block prior to this expansion, with the heal and the second block. However, Shimmer lets you do it while casting, and it doesn't affect the GCD, and you get 2 charges. And like, what more could you want from that? That's amazing. For the level 45 talents, Incanter's Flow is a high contender for Rune of Power. The only reason I use Rune of Power instead of Incanter's Flow is because it gives you, in PvP, the scales down to 35%. But it gives you 35% damage for 10 seconds. Like, just flat 10 seconds, big damage. Encounter flow fluctuates between 4 and 20%. So, overall, if you're fighting something like a Mistweaver and a Feral, or just something that's going to line of sight a lot and you won't get the opportunity to set up a Rune of Power, I would take Encounter's Flow. But besides that, I'm always running Rune of Power because you can set up the bursts, you can artifact, Rune of Power, burst, and it's terrifying. For your level 60 talent choices, oh wait, yeah, Mirror Image is pretty useless. They don't slow like they do with Frost. They don't apply a dot like they do with Fire. They just hit stuff and then they stand there. And they get line of sighted really easy. So this is pretty much useless for Arcane. For level 60, it's charged up being the best because instant 4 Arcane charges helps with your burst on demand. Resonance would help if you hit a lot of targets. However, if you hit a lot of targets with Arcane Barrage, you're going to probably break crowd control in PvP. And in general, people aren't always stacked in PvP. And you lose all your Arcane charges whenever you use Barrage. Most of the time, I will never use this ability unless I'm trying to save mana. Supernova, I have yet to really try this because I just don't see it being as useful. There's maybe been like 2 situations out of like over 300 arenas where this would have changed the game. For your level 75 talents, you're going to have Ice Flows being the best up until next patch when it's removed, because Blizzard hates Arcane Mages. Basically, you use this and you can do anything while moving, which is amazing, because you can use it and evocate. You can blink while running as well, which is pretty nice because if you're using Shimmer. And you can cast Polymorph while moving. You can do your burst while moving. You can run around a corner. Like, you can run around a corner and set up Rune of Power in a position so that you can hit people on the other side. And in general, it helps a lot with the lack of mobility that Arcane has. So that's why it's the best. Frost Nova is pretty good in some situations, like if you're versus TSG, but besides that, it's kind of meh. Ring of Frost won't really be able to be used unless you line it up with Frost Nova, and so that's 2 cooldowns being used to get one of these off when instead you could just run away and cast Polymorph. However, Ring of Frost does have the ability to zone an entire area for a while, but most of the time it'll only get you, like per target in it, it'll only be used once. And Ice Flows is up every 20 seconds. And the way you can rotate it, you can rotate it here, and then when it has 2 seconds left, you use another charge. Then when you have 2 seconds left, you use another charge. And then by then you'll have 2 charges back, so you can just keep Ice Flows up for a very, very long time. So yeah, that's it for the 75 talents. For level 90, you have Unstable Magic being like the best by, in my opinion, a lot. Realistically, probably not as much as I value it, because 15% chance to deal an extra 50% additional damage. That extra 50% additional damage is a separate hit, so it has its own individual chance to crit, which is a huge deal, because if you crit with your initial hit, then you get this proc that has 15% chance to go off. That proc is dealing 50% additional damage of the crit. So say you crit for 800k, that extra damage is going to be dealt as 400k. And that can crit. So you could potentially do 1.6 million damage in one hit with these numbers that I just threw out there. The biggest crit that I've gotten with an Arcane Blast was like 714k in PvP or something like that. And that was in arenas without like any crazy Zerker buffs or anything from Warsound Gulch. And so, yeah, it's pretty nice. I prefer this talent over the next ones. Like, these two, Erosion and Nether Tempest, are pretty close. The only reason I don't use them is because I like big numbers and spontaneous explosions. So Erosion, I'm going to talk about this before Nether Tempest because I think it's just better, except for fighting stealth. So Erosion is just pretty much going to be a consistent 8% increase to your damage across the board, which is pretty cool. And if you Arcane Explosion or hit them with an Arcane Orb or anything, it will also apply the debuff. Or if they get hit by the dot on your artifact, it will apply Erosion. So it's pretty much always going to be 8% increased damage, except for like your first 2 hits maybe. Nether Tempest is really good for fighting, like I said, stealth. Or if you're dueling, it's really good for that too. But this is mostly for arenas, like what I'm talking about. You would use Nether Tempest to stop a rogue from stealthing, or like stop a feral from stealthing 50,000 times during Incarn, or to get a rogue out of stealth, because I've had it before where you hit a rogue, or you hit a rogue's partner with Nether Tempest, and then the explosion will occasionally catch them and take them out of stealth, because it just shoots out shit in an AoE around the target. So that's pretty nice. But still, I like Unstable Magic more, because big damage, it's always nice. And a little AoE, but no one really cares about that. For the level 100 talents, we have Useless, Useless, and somewhat kind of useful. Next patch, this is actually going to be huge. It's going to be 500% of your spell power, which is amazing in some sense, and I'm pretty sure the burst lineup is going to change because of this talent, and I want to try it. I want to do all these tests and stuff to figure out what's going to be the new best way to one-shot something, and the fastest way to do it, and has the least ways to be interrupted. If that makes any sense at all. Hopefully it does. Anyways, so what this does, you throw it, deals damage, or it gives you 1 charge when you cast it, and 1 charge every time it deals damage. So, I cast it, I get a charge. Had it hit targets, it would have given me a charge for each individual target. In terms of its damage, it's pretty garbage. But, you know, whatever. You're using it for the charges in case you have charged up on cooldown and you just used Arcane Barrage. You can barrage throughout the orb, and then barrage again. See if you can get some cool stuff like that, but usually it's just kind of like there, because all of these talents for the 100 choices are pretty meh. Alright, so that's going to be it for talents. Now to move to honor talents. For honor talents, my opinion, the best all-around page is this one right here. I'm using this probably 80% of the time. I like Gladiator's Medallion more than these two because, well, Relentless, I'm not an orc, so I can't stack the stun reduction, so I don't even look at it. Adaptation, if you use your trinket on the first thing that hits you, and they're not going on you, say you get hit by like a cyclone and you instant trinket that and then you get full kidneyed into burst, you have to ice block. Whereas you could just sit the cyclone before if you're running Gladiator's Medallion. And I like Gladiator's Medallion the most because it gives you the most control over what you're doing. And that's important to me. For the next tier, my favorite is Train of Thought, because 15% increased damage across the board whenever you're not being hit is amazing for your opener. After your opener, you're usually getting trained to the ground, so it's not that great. But in the opener, you have a very high chance to one-shot people because of this. Well, not just because of this, but it helps a lot. The next one that I would use would be Mind Quickness, because if I know I'm gonna get trained to the ground, say I'm versus like a Warlock and a DK, and I know I'm always gonna be getting hit, and I'll never get the Train of Thought, then I'll just run Mind Quickness, get faster polymorphs and everything. I thought about running Initiation a couple times, but like it's just so weird. I just don't like it. Maybe if I was Frost, I could like let someone get topped off and hit them with a Glacial Spike, and then it'd have a 30% higher crit chance. But I don't see it being usable by Arcane, which is what I play. The next tier is going to be Survivability, and out of all of them, the best one for survivability is Prismatic Cloak in almost every situation, except for like fighting rogues or warriors or melee and physical damage only, because it literally lets you dodge spells, which is really overpowered, but really weak in the same sense as you actually have to press the button and use it like right before they finish the cast. Because you can use this to dodge Full Moon, you can use this to dodge Chaos Bull, you can dodge Greater Pyroblast, you can dodge Glacial Spike. Like, if it has a cast bar, you can dodge it. You can dodge some instant abilities, but those are really hard to predict. Like, I've dodged dots that are being applied, which is not that great in considering that they'll just use it again, because dots don't really have cooldowns. But it helps if you're trying to get a stealth. Like, say you mass invis and you blink right away, and then someone tries to put a dot on you as you're fading. This will stop that from happening. So that's my outlook on it. Prismatic Cloak being the best. Burning Determination is the most buggy freaking ability in the world. It almost never works versus Warlocks, and that's the only situation I can consider using this talent, because Warlocks are Affliction Warlocks, to be specific, are really, really hard to play against as an Arcane, because if you get locked out of Arcane, you pretty much just have Ice Barrier and Frost Nova. That's like all you can do. It's pretty miserable. Other situations where I would take this is versus like two shamans, like say they're running Turbo with a Resto Shaman. This could be useful because the Shaman would have like a 1.6-second lockout. No, it'd be a 1-second lockout. So that's pretty ridiculous. Besides that, for surviving versus most things that you wouldn't take Prismatic Cloak is Netherwood Armor, because I mean it's the only thing that would be useful in that situation. Say versus like Warrior, Monk, Healer. You're never gonna need to dodge spells. You just need to not get one shot. Or like Demon Hunter, Rogue. Just anything that's not casting, you would take Netherwind. Or if you're not casting and you're not afraid of being interrupt locked, like the entire match. The next tier is going to be more survivability, and I've only taken Den Size a couple times because I think it's pretty useless, so I'm gonna like get that out to start. The real options are really just Temporal Shield or Kleptomania. I pretty much always have Temporal Shield unless I'm versus a Resto Druid, because you can steal, like, the Resto Druid has an ability called Overgrowth, and it applies all their hots instantly. If you Kleptomania right after they do that, they get so confused and they usually have no idea what's going on, and then you can kill them pretty easy. Besides fighting Resto Druids, Kleptomania is pretty useless, so there's that. It's also really good for rated battlegrounds. So say your target caller calls, hey, we're going to switch to this guy, you can steal all their hots as soon as they switch. So any like pre-mitigation that they tried to have up will be gone. And you can just straight up try to nuke them, and they won't be ready. Temporal Shield, though, is my favorite. because you can literally negate everything. However, this heal is reduced by Grievous Wounds and the Mortal Strike, the talent the Arms Warriors have to make the target heal or receive 70% less healing, something like crazy like that. That reduces Temporal Shield's healing. So that's just something to keep in mind. It's a 45-second cooldown, and that's a super short cooldown for how incredibly impactful this ability is. Like, every 45 seconds, you can negate an entire burst as long as you don't die. It can be spell stolen and purged, however, so that's kind of a downside. But if it is spell stolen or purged, you still get healed, so it's as if you canceled the ability. Because you can, if you cancel the buff as you have it, like I have this macro, which is right here, / cancel aura temporal shield. If you cancel it, what ends up happening is you get healed for everything that's been absorbed by it immediately instead of at the end. You only want to use that when you're like about to die though, because if you don't, you'll die and then you won't get healed at all. So it could be impactful unless you're not paying too great of attention. So yeah. The next tier is my favorite tier because it's so strange. You can you can increase Arcane Power's damage by 10%, which puts it up to 40% in PvP. However, the duration goes down by 5 seconds, so you basically have an 8-second buff to try to kill them. And that lasts longer than your burst, so it's not that big of a downfall. That's why I use it a lot of the time. But realistically, Torment the Weak is much better because it could, in theory, be up 100% of the time. And what Torment the Weak is just a passive 15% damage increased on anyone who's slowed. The reason I usually don't use this is because if I'm spamming slow on something, I'm probably not casting on them because I'm running away from them. But if I was playing Rogue, Mage, Insert, Healer here, this would be really strong because they would always be slowed. So I'd always have 15% damage increase, which would stack on top of Train of Thought, which would stack on top of Arcane Power, which would stack on top of Rune of Power. I'm sure you see where I'm going with this. You would just have a shit ton of damage. So, yeah. Torment the Weak overall is probably better. I would take it in RBGs over Concentrated Power. However, most of the time I'm doing arenas, so that's why I take Concentrated Power. Because if I can't get them with my bursts in that 8-second window, I'm probably not going to kill them with a passive 15% damage increase. That's just my thoughts behind it. However, take that with a grain of salt. I am not 3K rated. I'm pretty sure there aren't any Arcane Mages that are. So, yeah, that's just my thoughts on that. It also has to deal with the playstyle. Time Anomaly is going to be super, super fun next patch. Right now, it's useless. It'll almost never go off. Please don't take it. Save yourself the time and just don't. The next tier is pretty much Mass Invisibility, Rewind Time. Master of Escape doesn't exist. The reason why it doesn't exist is because if you're trying to take that, just take Mass Invisibility instead, because it's better. The only situation I see Master of Escape being better is if you're versus something that has a 1-minute cooldown on its burst, and you're not able to stop their burst. And I can't really think of too many situations like that. So you would take Rewind Time versus Melee Cleaves, or Warlocks, well, Destrolocks to be specific, because you can blink, run way near the, like way away from where you just blinked from, and then as soon as they're about to finish casting something, you can just displacement, and they'll be like, what the fuck? And then you're like on the other side of the map where you initially blinked, because it'll make the buff last for like 28 seconds. 27 seconds, sorry. 13 plus 14. So that's my input on Rewind Time. I enjoyed using it prior to Mass Invisibility. When I got Mass Invisibility, I just immediately orgasmed because this is amazing. You can be stealth and then set up your burst. And it's kind of weird saying that, but you can cast while you're stealthed by Mass Invisibility, because as long as you're not doing damage, you will stay stealth. And when I say doing damage, I mean a cast that you cast while you're stealth that does damage. You can use a dot being Mark a Balloonith, and then stealth, and it will not take you out of stealth when it procs. However, your next cast, if it deals damage, will take you out of stealth once you finish the cast. So I'll show you that in a burst video upcoming soon. Also, mass invisibility will stealth your teammates, hence it's mass invisibility. So if you're playing with a boomkin or something, you can get them to use the first moon and then half moon, and then you can stealth them, and then both of you guys can set up burst, and they can set up their full moon, and it'll land, and your shit will land, and something will explode. So that's just a theory. I want to try it out. I haven't gotten to play with any really good boomkins yet. I would love to do that. However, there aren't many that I've ran into because they're all kind of monkeys. That's just my experience. I know good boomkins exist. Like they definitely exist. I love the thought of a good boomkin, and I've seen good boomkins. I just haven't gotten to play with them, unfortunately. Alright, so what you're going to do when you're not bursting is you're going to run, you're going to try to stop the enemy damage output as much as you can, and you're going to try to peel, or if your teammate has the solo kill pressure, you can just peel for them and try to get it to be possible for them to be able to secure a kill while you're not really able to output damage because your burst is on cooldown. To do that, you'd be running around sheeping stuff, you'd be trying to stop their interrupts by getting yourself interrupted. You can Frost Nova things away and keep Ice Barrier up the entire time so that you're not getting wrecked when you're not bursting. And overall, you go from going to one shot to running away like a bitch, basically, is how to play the spec when you're not bursting. You just run. Or occasionally you can secure a kill if everyone's like out of cooldowns and you're just sitting there and you get to free cast Arcane Blasts. But that doesn't happen too often if you're like above 1300. You'll just get mongoloided to death. So, yeah. Try not to burn your CDs when you're not bursting, because you need to line them all up in order to burst. Like, most efficiently burst. You want everything to be available. Because if everything's available, you're able to do about a almost 3 million damage burst. Potentially more, potentially less, depending on crits. And if you get your procs on unstable magic. So, yeah. That's how to play the spec when you're not bursting. So, in order to burst, you need to know how to set up your burst. And to set up your burst is usually going to be with greater invisibility. And like having a teammate or teammates bait the enemies into a vulnerable position. By that I mean a spot where they are not able to line of sight you, or like leap into some crazy area and then line of sight you, or leap behind you. Just like a vulnerable position would be like, say this broom is my enemy. I'm going to want to be right about here, because there's nowhere for the broom to line of sight me unless it runs all the way to this pillar, or this pillar, or like blinks behind me or some crazy shit. So this broom is in a very vulnerable position. This broom is defenseless against this onslaught of arcane power. So that's the positioning you want. I know a lot of the time they're going to hump the pillar, hump the crate, hump the wagon in Ruins of Lordaeron, hump the graveyard. They will probably hump something because they're horn dogs. So in order to deal with them humping something, you have to bait them out, or you need to lock them down with like your partner's CC, because you don't have any stuns. The best that you can do alone to set your own burst up is polymorph or frost nova them, and hope that they don't like roll or heroic leap or demonic dash, whatever the fuck it's called, or sprint or cloak of shadows. Like there's a lot of things they can do to avoid getting killed. So in order to set up properly, you need to make sure that they don't have those things by baiting it out before. A lot of the time, I will try to bait rogues cloak of shadows with a polymorph, because for some reason rogues really like to cloak polymorph, like the first polymorph. I don't know if they're just bad or what, but it seems pretty bad. I know at higher ratings rogues probably won't do that, they'll just get cleansed by the healer, but it's something to keep in mind that you could use to set up your burst. For Death Knights, they're kind of harder to set up on because they can just AMS like every 30 seconds or some crazy thing like that. But if you can manage to catch them without it, or catch someone that's not the Death Knight, which I highly recommend, then you can usually get some big damage out. So, in order to live long enough to set up your burst, in order to burst, what you need to do is spell steal hots whenever you're being focused, if you're fighting something that has hots, if you're running Kleptomania, which you should definitely run versus Restos, you use it when they use a lot of buffs on them at once. So say like Regrowth, Rejuvenation, Life Bloom, and Wild Growth are all up on someone. That would be a good time to Kleptomania, because you're getting all that healing just sucked straight to you, which is great. You're going to want to keep Ice Barrier up at all times. Because you're Arcane, you have this handy dandy weapon artifact trait thing right here. Makes your Ice Barrier fat as fuck. It's amazing. Keep that up. It's only a 25-second cooldown, a full minute duration. So what I like to do is I'll Ice Barrier when there's 24 seconds until the arena starts. The arena will start, Ice Barrier will be off cooldown, I'll still have 30 seconds of the buff. So it will let you take some damage, and then as soon as it breaks, reapply it. Don't reapply it if you still have some left, unless you don't think that you're going to get hit for another 25 seconds for it to come off cooldown. So you have that like double barrier for like 1.2 million damage. Kind of huge. Another thing to do, spam slow. Slow is an instacast, 35 yard range. You can really just like run around and just be like bam, 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 and just slow everything by spamming it. If they dispel it, or if they Hand of Freedom, you can spell steal the Hand of Freedom and then reapply the slow. Or just reapply the slow if they're a druid. Like if a druid's chasing you and they're like spamming cat form, just spam slow with them and run. And pray that you outrun them. Most of the time though, they'll leap on you, and when they leap, that's when you blink. And that brings me to my second thing, which is blinking to avoid damage. You have this amazing talent, which I mentioned before, called Prismatic Cloak. Use that shit. It's great. It will save you so much. And you can dodge CC, so that's a big deal too. Using Prismatic Cloak on the right abilities can completely negate the existence of another player. I've had matches where Destrolux are sitting there spamming, and then they'll switch to me. They'll try to Chaos Bolt, and then I'll blink. And then they'll Chaos Bolt again, and then I'll blink. Then they'll Chaos Bolt again, and then I'll Displacement, and blink again. And all of it will be dodged. They won't land a Chaos Bolt if I'm paying attention. It's really easy to just dodge it. All you have to do is be like, oh, boop, I don't feel like getting hit today. That's it. Doesn't work with melees though. Like, you can't dodge Mortal Strike. That'd be kind of broken. And then Temporal Shield is another huge thing. If you know that they're about to burst you, Temp Shield, just do it. It's better to use the cooldown and potentially not need it if you feel like you're in a dangerous position, rather than not use it until you're at like 300k health and then try to Temp Shield, and it just won't do enough by that point. You need to use it to take the brunt of the damage. Besides that, you can Greater Invisibility, because it gives you a big damage reduction, 60%, for 3 seconds after reappearing, which, isn't that great, but if you're getting trained to the ground and you Greater Invis, you have like a second where you drop their target, and then when you come out of stealth, they're still hitting you, and then you take a lot less damage. It helps you healer sometimes. It's just like, personally, I prefer using Greater Invisibility offensively, because I like killing things. And if I'm getting trained to the ground, usually running away and doing the other steps that I mentioned will work most of the time. So, there's that. Ice Block is kind of your biggest cooldown defensively, and sometimes offensively try not to do that though, unless you can secure a kill off it. But you would Ice Block if you are going to die, or if you can prevent enough pressure that will turn the tide of a game. So like, I'll show you a clip where I Ice Block this Marksman Hunter's full burst, and that wins us the arena because he pretty much has no damage after that, and then we blow him up. So I'll show you guys that like right now actually.
shot. True shot. Murder crows.
I need to get closer.
Leothar is eye. Trinketed. 2 minutes. True shot down.
I'll need to equip that to use it.
Chaos Nova. Deterrence. Deterrence down.
Another good thing you can do is break combat to eat. It's a little harder to do in 2s and 3s than it is to do in RBGs. However, if you can manage and your team doesn't need you for that like 6 or 7 seconds that it'll take for you to get a bunch of mana back, then do it, because it's way better to have mana than to not have mana, because everything an Arcane Mage does costs a shit ton of mana, and if you run out, you're literally useless, and you are defenseless. So don't run out of mana. On that note, you can move while evocating with Islas, so try to do that when you're like half mana, so that you don't get punished too hard for going or like it's harder to get punished by going So now, depending on your race, you will have your own racials. So I'll just start with Alliance and then go to Horde, and then I'll do Pandas in the middle. And for Horde, it's a little bit harder to explain, but I'll get there when I get there. So Night Elves have Stealth, which you can use to drop target, and you can blink, and then it'll take you out of stealth when you blink, but that'll probably confuse the enemies. Gnomes can break slows, so use that if you're like getting spam Icy Chain, you can break the slow and run away. Humans can break stuns, that's good for fighting rogues especially, because you can break stun and blink, because if you're running Shimmer, your blink no longer breaks you out of stuns, which is literally the only downside to Shimmer. But like the amount of upsides that Shimmer gives outweighs the downsides in my opinion. If you're a trainee, you can heal yourself. I recommend doing that. Dwarves have Stone Form. That's really good. It's like a mini shield wall. Pretty nice. If I was a dwarf, I'd probably use it in synergy with Greater Invisibility. And just get like 70% damage reduction. Yeah, because damage reduction doesn't stack additively, it stacks multiplicatively. Worgens can run really fast, which is a lot more useful than you think, being able to line of sight an enemy that's trying to burst you, and just innately running faster. That's really good. Pandas can incapacitate, which is like the most underused racial I've ever seen. I almost never see pandas use their racial. However, I almost never see pandas anyways, so yeah, just take that with a grain of salt. Alright, so getting to Horde. The best defensive mage usable racial, in my opinion, is Will of the Forsaken, because it breaks you out of CC. It's the only one that breaks you out of CC. Besides that, you can, I don't recommend this one, but you can use the Orc Berserk racial, or Bloodlust racial, and then Ice Barrier with the extra spell power, and it'll give you a bigger shield. However, if you do that, you won't have that up to burst, so that's the downside to that. And Berserk, you can use the Troll Berserk as well to get more polymorphs out. However, again, don't recommend that. It's there though. Like if you back against the wall and nothing else is available, it's potentially an option. Blood Elf Silence is pretty good. You can use it defensively. I prefer to use it offensively 98% of the time, because having that blanket silence is super nice. And then last but not least, actually last but least, is the Goblin Rocket Jump. It jumps you about maybe this far. It's kind of nice if you're slowed to just get there, get around a pillar, but I don't know, goblins are their racial is pretty useless in my opinion. So now my favorite part of the spec is the burst. That's the main reason I play Arcane Mage, because this amazing burst. And I'm going to play a few clips for you guys so that you can see the bursts like in action in PvP in actual arenas. But the burst order is going to be Mark of a Lunith, Mass Invisibility, so that you can set up your next few abilities while you're safe and unable to be interrupted. So after Mass Invisibility, you're going to cast Rune of Power. As soon as you finish casting Rune of Power, you're going to use arcane power and charged up at the same time, I don't recommend macroing them into one button because there will be situations where you use arcane power and you don't need to use charged up. So just keep charged up manual. You can macro. Yeah, no, just don't macro for this burst in specific. After you arcane power charged up Rune of Power, you're going to hardcast one Arcane Blast. After that one Arcane Blast is about to end, you're going to press Presence of Mind, and then immediately pump out another 2 Arcane Blasts. In that time, you'll probably deal a few million damage. And also, the first instant Arcane Blast should be hitting around the same time the Mark of Luneth is exploding. So keep that in mind so that you know exactly when all your damage is about to hit. After your second instant Arcane Blast, you're going to use missiles if you have any, barrage if it's enough to secure a kill, and just try to finish them off if you can. If they do live, you're going to probably be very sad, and then you're just going to need to play like a bitch, as mentioned before. So yeah, we'll get some of that footage going right about now.
Chase like a sniper. 3 shots, no waste, feeling hyper. Might start a little fight, not gonna sugarcoat it. 6 shots, stand back, cause I'm fully loaded.
You on the Resto Shaman? I'm gonna go on the Shadow Priest, okay? Alright, Shadow's dead.
Fuck!
Hey, we can open
What
on the healer.
happened?
We can open on the healer.
Oh my god, sorry, I misclicked.
Yeah, doing it.
I'm an idiot.
Rushing.
Just going where?
Yep. Big damage. Oh, feared.
No.
Yep, big damage, big damage.
Setting again.
Got him.
Nice.
Nice.
All according to plan.
Wait.
Oh, by the way, please like or dislike, and if you dislike, please tell me what I could do better. If you like it and you have constructive criticism anyways, please, again, leave it in the comments below. I would love to hear feedback, because then I know how to improve. Keep in mind, though, that this is my first guide that I'm actually editing, so my editing skills are pretty garbage. I'm going to practice that as much as I can. If you want to tell me how I can do certain things using editing softwares, that'd be really nice. Or if you want to show me examples, that's also pretty cool. So yeah, leave feedback, like, subscribe, dislike. If you feel like that, please don't. Love me, please.